So let's dive in to our Heart Talk number 3, toxic leadership. And let me quickly put us all onto the same page. What is toxic leadership? Toxic leadership is a style marked by fear, control, lack of trust, and psychological unsafety. It shows up when authority is used to dominate rather than guide, when mistakes are punished rather than learned from, and when belonging is replaced by obedience. Research from Harvard Business School notes that the cost of toxic individuals in organizations is extremely high, and one study found that mitigating or removing the toxic impact enhances performance more than hiring a superstar. In short, when leadership is toxic, the damage doesn't just flow downwards, it spreads on all levels. It goes sideways, backwards, upwards, and it's all around us. And here is the striking part. Many toxic leaders are not even aware of the damage they cause with their leadership style, because it is very often inherited. It's what they saw growing up, what was modeled to them by their own leaders or parents when we go talk RTT. And they maybe believe that they are strong and driven, and so they keep spreading fear and damage. And today we are talking about your experiences, how we feel body wisdom can influence this dynamic. And so we are not trying to fix people, but we are trying to spread the awareness that mental fitness, managing our mind, can be extremely helpful in situations like that. And as you all know me, I want to start with a little personal story, what's going on in the workplace. And the first thing that came to my mind was my senior boss at Mercedes-Benz many moons ago in Germany. And when I had my first day at work, and got up early, got dressed nicely, did my hair, and I was so excited to start my corporate career. And so they put me into the telephone central station. This is where everybody who starts lands first. And then, so I was sitting there, and there was a big glass door, and I saw him coming, like typical Bavarian, with a, like with this felt coat and a hat. And I think he even had a little, those thing which the Bavarians have on their hats. So he walked in, and I stood up, and he walked in, and I was all smiles, and I was just about to say good morning, and my name is, and he looked at me and he said, "What do you want?" Walked into his office. The fire door slammed, boom, 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 boom. And that was my first day at work. I was seriously not joking. And I was so scared of this guy. I was so scared of this guy that when my first phone call came in, I was supposed to pick up the phone, right, and say who I am and what I do and how can I help you? I couldn't really speak. I lost my confidence in speaking on the phone. And yeah, that was my first experience in a corporate environment with a toxic leader. And I'm very sure that he was not, that this was not his choice. I'm very sure that he was Second World War. I grew up after the war and whatnot. I'm very sure he did not mean to hurt me so much, but he did. And it lasted the whole time I was there. There was always this sense of fear. So let me start to like, talking enough now about me and my experience. Let me start with the first question I want to throw into the room about toxic leadership. Have you ever worked in a place where you could feel the tension before you even opened the door, where your body knew before your brain that something was off here? When you think about an experience of a toxic workplace or a toxic leader, what behavior or what atmosphere comes to your mind? And how did it affect the people around you, in, or if it is a story about a coachee? What comes to your mind first?
I don't mind starting.
All right.
I think to protect identities, I think that I will generalize a little bit.
Absolutely.
But still, I think it's really important to sort of express what that felt like to walk into a room where it's tangible, the tension in the room is tangible. So my colleagues, not very happy with the lack of communication from above. And this is quite some years ago. I can describe that atmosphere, the dread as you walk up to the door to enter that space where you know you're probably going to be told rather than consulted. The electric atmosphere that's electric for the wrong reasons because of the high cortisol and the adrenaline and the fear of what are we going to be told to do next or who's going to be in trouble because public shaming and blaming was a part of that culture. And I'm as a drama specialist, I will always look at people's body language and what they are emitting in terms of their presence. And I will remember, and this is in actual several workplaces, people's closed body language, very armored up, protecting themselves, waiting and suspecting the worst. But all this speculation as well, people speculate loads when they don't know what's coming because communication pathways are poor. So there's been a lot of beforehand, a lot of whispering, a lot of gossiping, a lot of assuming of what's happening and who might be in trouble and who might be shamed. So that kind of thing, I think, has been reflected in several workplaces that I've been in. And at risk of speaking too long, so I'll just sort of shorten this a little bit. That was some years ago, and I always hope that things have moved on. And when we read the works of Brené Brown and the likes, you know, you kind of think, yes, come on, people are moving on, but it isn't always the case. And there are many corners of the world and industries and organizations where this is still happening. And a coachee of mine, not that long ago, spoke of a very similar situation in her workplace. And she was quite a high manager, and she still felt disempowered, felt that she wasn't informed, felt the fear of what is coming next. A lot of the rumors were circulating, and that's really destabilizing. It takes away people's agency. So it's clearly still happening.
Absolutely, Sarah. And you just said something that totally resonates with me, and which I also put down in my notes before to make sure I don't forget to mention it, which is really, what is the result of environments like this? Who wants to gossip? Everybody knows gossiping is bad, but it happens in environments like that, right? Because people want to, the power of a toxic leader is so multifaceted because, some people overwork because they want to get that little praise on the shoulder. They wouldn't dare to ask for a salary, a higher salary. They just want to have that tap on the shoulder so they don't belong to the group of people who are in the bad books, right? And this gossiping and also what often happens is the pulling back, I don't care anymore. I do what I'm told. I don't think, because the moment I think, I get told off anyway. And therefore, I just do my job and let's see what happens. Yeah. And at the Christmas party, I will somehow survive, you know, the evening and go home, hopefully, without earning another bad comment or something like that. And that's reality. That's not like in my case, whatever, 30, 40 years ago, it is happening. And you also mentioned a very important thing. You talked about how it affects our hormones. And what we know from our training is that if our cortisol is high, if our adrenaline is high, if we are constantly on a stress cycle, and we never give that stress cycle a break, where we can start think clearly, where we can put ourselves back into a place where we should be or where we should operate from, we harm our body. And we harm our body sometimes to the extent that it is not fixable anymore. And yeah. And I believe that with body wisdom, we cannot change a toxic leadership. We cannot change a toxic, a dynamic. But what we can change is, and strongly influence is, that we get people out of a stress cycle on a regular basis, and we can bring awareness that when something is not quite right, to give people the strength, the adrenaline and the testosterone they need to be more resilient, to maneuver through, to stand up, to have the courage and the confidence to stand up and say, no, that's not how we are going to do it. Sorry, took a little long now, but like I said before, there is so much about this subject that triggered so many thoughts, so many memories, and it also opens up a can of worms into so many areas of leadership and into workplaces where I feel it's still not talked about enough. Iris or Sophia, what is your contribution to this first prompt, or to this first question?
Happy to contribute. I just
Yeah.
wanted to throw in a saying, because it actually makes me smile. It's a northern German saying, and it goes like, the dead fish starts to stink from head downwards. And
Correct.
this is exactly what I'm having that in mind when I enter a working atmosphere or shop environment, wherever, you're gonna notice that. You really can tune into that and feel how the workers are behaving, and then then you notice, okay, that's a sign there's something toxic within the leadership. You might not know exactly what, but you notice in regards to the behavior.
Absolutely. And if you would come to work in the morning into a healthy environment, you would immediately, whatever happened to you earlier, whatever stress you had earlier, you would immediately come and feel safe and go like, okay, let's go into the day. But
exactly,
yeah,
you would mirror that. I mean, this is what our mirror neurons are also sharing with us. I mean, we gonna pick up on the tension. We're gonna pick up as well on the relaxed mode that someone is carrying within them. So yeah, absolutely.
it is. You guys are now today. You're taking all and everything out of my pockets, because mirroring was also something I wanted to talk about in this hard talk, because that's so important to realize that we just pick it up without knowing. We just tick, tick, get it into our system and we become a little toxic as well. And yeah, I can say that I've been sometimes not exactly the best leader. And if you're not aware of it, how can you change it? So yeah.
I
So
was just giggling at Sarah when Iris said the fish sinks first at the head, and Sarah was going, I wonder what that means. There's 3 Germans
It's
in the
quite
room.
visual.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think you pick up what's there when you join a space. Not just in terms of the atmosphere, but also it's almost like you've got the starter kit of your laptop and your handbook on your desk, but also the culture. You pick it up and your first instinct is, I want to try and fit in. And so whatever it is you're fitting into, you try that on. And it might take a few months before you realize this doesn't fit, or there's something wrong here, or, when the rose-tinted glasses come off, thinking about that when you're joining a new workplace. I have a couple of examples that I wanted to share here. And we've already talked about toxic leaders in leadership positions, senior people who trickle down that feeling and who create that sense of lack of agency. Sarah, you pointed it out. Iris, who create that kind of sense of mirroring, but also that kind of buzzing in a negative way environment of, what's the next thing that's going to happen here. But I wanted to take a slightly different approach, which is when you have, because leadership is also influence, right? And occasionally you have someone in your team who is a peer, or even who you are manager of, who has such a presence, such a negative presence, that in itself leads the group. And I've certainly been in situations where leaders of mine have tried to keep the peace and not upset people when someone is clearly dissatisfied, angry about not receiving a promotion, or not happy in their role, or whatever it might be that's driving that person, but they have a personality that is loud, that is, that elbows their way into every room. And there is a kind of toxic positivity in leadership that says we must treat everyone equally. We must. And so you end up with this situation where the rest of the room in every meeting are feeling, well, this person who is having such a negative impact on all of us is being treated with, white cotton gloves. And that has then the kind of spreading impact of making everybody else feel less valuable, making leadership feel powerless. I'm thinking about situations where I might have been that leader thinking, well, what on earth do I do here? And feeling powerless about the situation. And that, trickles into what that creates. If you have that kind of culture in the team, is that actually the toxic environment starts on a Sunday night. Because people are already feeling like, oh God, on Monday I have to sit in this room with this energy.
And Sophia, sorry to interrupt you, but there is also what's just coming up for me is that, a lot of people depend on the salary. They don't speak up because if they would, they might get fired because there will be always a way, people can find always a way to fire you. And I think that is the meanest weapon of all. This is this unspoken weapon they use, or if some of these toxic leaders, when they pretend they care and ask you what's going on in your life and what you do, and to get to know you a little bit so that they can actually use it against you when it comes then to putting pressure onto you. That's also not something.
I have an interesting thought about that, because I've often thought this in lots of places I've worked. There's this, and I had a weird start to my career, by the way. My first job was as an executive assistant in the C-suite in a FTSE 500 company in New York City. So I started my career back to front. I was in all the rooms that no one would ever be in because I was, bringing coffee. So I heard a lot of conversations and also had a lot of friends in the kind of, let's call them the lower echelons of the business, and was kind of seeing the impact on those people of the decisions that I was privy to because I was there taking notes. And so I've always had a very different, but I've heard it from people that I've coached, I hear it from apprentices I work with, and in the workplaces I've been in, there is always this kind of them and us. Things are happening to us. Leadership is doing things to us. And my personal privilege has been knowing both spaces from the beginning and kind of knowing that it's not really true. It's not true. Leadership is often, mostly, in my experience, limited though it might be, well-intentioned, but the communication isn't accurate and the connection isn't forged correctly. And then that them and us becomes the presiding culture. It's what remains. And then that, rather than dealing with the projects we're working on, the goals we're working towards, we're then dealing with how do we close the gap between them and us on a daily basis. And that's when you get something that I think a lot of startup or scale up organizations now is called toxic positivity, which is this idea that you're constantly, everything is great, we're over communicating, we have boards, we have transparency, we have lots of, we have everything, and all of the things that people actually feel kind of slip through the net. And yet leadership can then say, but we're communicating. We have we're saying, we're showing you everything, we're doing everything. And it becomes harder and harder and harder to put your finger on what the actual toxic behavior is. Because it's one thing having someone walk onto a floor and shout at you. There are mechanisms now to get that leader removed from businesses. Easy. Maybe that didn't, in the 1900s at Mercedes-Benz, that wasn't a thing. Sorry. But, there
not
are
the early 1900s.
there are mechanisms now, right? So it's not, I think the kind of out and loud toxic leader is maybe less of a threat now. It's that.
Oh, Sophia, can I jump in? Do you mind if I jump in? Because that's really sparked quite a lot of ideas with a coaching, a job that I had some time ago where I was coaching people from different levels within the organization. And that gave me, I guess, similarly, that insight into what was happening on the within the different stratas. And of course, it can get so political and very distressing for everyone involved. But from all those different perspectives, I felt honored to be in my position because clearly I'm not giving advice as a coach. Clearly, it is a totally confidential space, so nothing is divulged to anybody whatsoever. It stays within our relationship. But I started to see a picture opening up that was getting more and more clear to me, that exactly what you just said, that I don't think the intentions were malicious from above, and that idea, I mentioned Brené Brown a lot, but that idea that everyone's doing their best tends to be the case, or at least they think they're doing their best, and that is their intention. And I was really quite astonished to hear how the same situation was being received by different people within the organization. And it became a matter of trying to find the right questions to help each of those individuals try and gain insight as to what the other perspectives might be, so that they could broaden their thinking and recognize, as you said, Claudia, about that idea of noticing when we get sucked into toxic environments, and maybe that leaks into us a little bit without realizing, and we become a part of that. What part do we play in all of this? We have to become aware of that. I had to just mention that because it's an honor almost to have some insight into what's happening in the different levels, and that it's not all them and us. Yeah.
I think as well that, sorry, just a quick thing to come back to what Iris, you were saying, that the energy that's created is being misunderstood. So you can smell something, to use the metaphor, but no one's sure how to behave exactly in that environment. We can all feel that it's there, and kind of where it's coming from. I think, Iris, you said, you can't smell exactly where the toxicity is coming from in the leadership, but everybody knows. you don't have anyone to blame in that environment, because again, if you have one toxic leader or you have someone on your team where you can go, this is where this is coming from, that's different to saying, I can just feel it in the air and
Yeah.
it's seeping, and it's seeping into me and it's getting my back up, but I don't have anyone to look at and blame, because actually every leader I look at, I can see they're kind of well-intentioned, but still, why do I feel so terrible then? It's a really difficult challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm picking up from here is also that, the me and them, or them and the rest. And what I often see as well when it comes to toxic leaderships is that usually when there is a toxic leader, people are going one step down the ladder or two steps down the ladder and find somebody they can, connect to, because we need connection. We need a sense of belonging when we go to work. And where they, they use, like I call it those middlemen, where people are then engaging with them, sharing their problems with them, and they are becoming the middleman between the toxic leader and the team. And they get a lot of it out from it. They get a lot out from it because they feel the respect they get, but the pressure, all of a sudden, they realize the pressure comes now from both sides. And this is the most crashing position one can be in. And unfortunately, it's always those people who are who have the most empathy, who have, who are people pleasers, who are doers, who want to fix things and to, make good. And they don't realize that they are actually sitting between a rock and a hard place. And there is a few ways out. One of the bad ones is burnout. And when this dynamic, this is a pattern that repeats itself over and over again. And I wonder, how can we step in and make that clear, and how can we reach a toxic leader who benefits from this middleman, because that's only one person he or she has to speak to, right? And not to a whole team. So there's always this filter, and there is less responsibility and less, messages coming your way or complaints coming your way or whatever. But how can, we step into that system? Can we shake it up? How can we interrupt this system? For example, with body wisdom. And like what we do in our body wisdom sessions, when we bring up examples into a practice session and say, where do you feel your tension today? All right, just as an example. So I have a team meeting, a corporate team meeting, and I start my session, my 30-minute session, and I say, okay, self-reflect. What does your inner weather look like today? This is something I often use to ask people. And, when they come with, oh, I feel it in my chest, I feel it in my stomach, I feel tension, I feel tightness. Why is that? Yeah, because maybe whatever just happened, maybe in the office. All these things, our body absorbs it and keeps it, stores it. The body keeps score of everything we experience. And is that a good way, really, to shake up that system a little bit and say, look, if you have a feeling in your stomach or not in your heart or in your chest related to your work, you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to share this. You don't have to, let anybody know. But become aware that you're not in your heart is because you've been just hurt. You haven't been seen again. You haven't been heard again. And the knot becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And also to, body
Can I
wisdom.
jump in on that
Yes.
point specifically? It just had something come up for me, because the awareness that you build through body wisdom practice is valuable to yourself in the moment, but it can take people a long time to get to that place of awareness. I mean, to even the coaching question of where do you feel this in your body? How many people are able to do that on the first time they are asked it? That, you know, it's a really difficult journey to get to that level of self-awareness. But what comes up for me around the power of the body wisdom practice, I think the thing that a toxic workplace or a toxic leader removes is boundaries. It removes personal boundaries completely, because you start thinking about that person or that environment outside of that environment. Indicator number one. You feel the emotions and the stress in your body outside of that environment. And then when you're in that environment, you are no longer able to regulate your emotions. You get upset because you don't, when you don't really understand why, because you're triggered by something in the environment. Your point about taking on that toxic behavior yourself, starting to gossip because you're trying to. So what that environment takes away from you is your ability to set boundaries. And body wisdom practice enforces boundaries. So even if you're not sure where you feel it in your body, doing that practice creates that barrier. I often say to my coachees, you're in a good place when you're excited about work and the problems make you interested. Problem solving makes you interested. And even if something is annoying, you can get annoyed and battle it out, but things don't reach past here. They don't,
But Sophia, it also, it also happens to the toxic leader, him her, or herself. Because if they are willing, there's a lot of research, and I think I can refer to Harvard Business again, a lot of toxic leaders are narcissists. And if that is true, then we know that, especially Iris might know more about that, but narcissists are, they would never admit that there is anything wrong with them, and you can hardly break that belief system. It's ingrained, right? So there's this one thing. If that is true, then we have a little bit of a problem here. But there are some other leaders who are, like we said before, who are toxic because of what of how they've been brought up, of how they've been treated as an apprentice or as a trainee or whatever. But awareness is what we bring, and awareness is what can change patterns. And when it comes to money, let's just be very honest here, because even the most toxic leader, when it comes to money and when it comes to performance, they all, the ears get big. And how can I do this? Yeah, very simple. It's super simple. Create a space of safety, create a space where people will do the work anyway, but if they do it properly and with their full engagement, you benefit from it, because there is more performance, there's better well-being, there's more success for everybody, and everybody can ride the waves, and everybody can go from Monday to Friday with so much more joy. And like you just said, Sophia, I love that. When you have that feeling that you want to solve a problem, yes, that's the energy we need, right? We don't want this, okay, I wait for my next instruction kind of thing. Awesome.
I'd like to jump in. Just a few more points I'd like to mention, because all of your comments, they were so spot on. There are 3 questions you might ask yourself when you are in a toxic environment. The first is, can I change the environment itself? If not, can I change myself? And if that is not really a thing, can I accept it? So there are 3 different ways how to approach that. And that's why I so much love the point that Sophia brought up with the boundaries. And that's the key aspect. When you are aware of your inner self and are aware of what belongs to you and what belongs to others, you can clearly differentiate and also draw the line and say to yourself, well, my boss might be toxic. He's behaving in a way that I do not agree with, but that's his issue. And how much can I distance myself from that? How much can I really create my own space and focus on what I want to achieve in my workplace, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And if that is seen and if that is heard, and if you maybe have that middleman, then you might remain in that position, and you just say, oh, whatever, I know your personality, I can live with it, okay, let's move on, kind of thing, right? Not everybody can do that.
Yeah,
But
but the next thing is, if you change the job, you might just face the same situation again over and over, and therefore it is very crucial that you develop your own practice, like with body wisdom,
and
how to
also,
navigate this situation.
correct, thank you, Iris. And also that, you train yourself to become more resilient towards this kind of leadership.